Sex Talk with Erica Miley. 'Cause sexuality is tough. And okay, sex just isn't good enough. No. Sex Talk with Erica Miley.
Hey folks, welcome to Sex Talk with Erica Miley. Erica Miley here. And you know what? I decided, this season, why not do some weird, fun shit? I brought a co-host for this episode. Y'all know and love her, though. She's been on my show before, Andrea LaRosa. And the reality is we have like this mutual, like professional crush on each other. But Andrea is a dating coach and a matchmaker who helps men understand women better. And we're essentially today, Andrea, I hope you're ready. Like,
I'm so ready for this.
we're gonna get in deep to like cybersecurity. We're gonna get in deep to women's experience of dating. We're gonna get in deep to, we've already been, just so the listeners know, we've already been talking for 30 minutes just outside of recording because we have so much to talk about. So I want to welcome this wonderful, amazing person who, yet again, TikTok has introduced me to. Merely Ashley is focusing on cybersecurity and being a cybersecurity advocate for women specifically. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. TikTok is a fun rabbit hole to go down and meet lots of different people. So I appreciate you having me on your show.
So we have a mental health, and this is like one of those, like, you walk into a bar jokes waiting to happen, like cybersecurity advocate, dating coach, and a therapist walk into a bar. There's got to be a punchline somewhere.
You come up with lots of good jokes.
So I really want people to kind of get to know you first before Andrea and I start to nerd out. So talk a little bit about how you kind of found this niche and how, like, maybe your first viral video on TikTok became what it is.
Yeah. So a few years right before COVID, I was trying to transition careers and was into something called OSINT, which is open source intelligence, which is anything you can find on basically the internet that is publicly available, and you can do investigations. So there are a lot of analyst positions within the government, within other agencies. And then COVID hit, and I was doing virtual school with 2 children, and I'm happily retired, a retired teacher, because that was not my forte. But then I was thinking, what do I do? I had a lot of stress going on in my life, and downloaded TikTok because in the cybersecurity community, there was a lot of kind of skepticism around it. What are they doing with our information? And just decided to download it one day. And as someone going through therapy and a lot of life transitions, I seemed to really enjoy it. I liked meeting the different people, actually hearing the experiences of people, and not having just the news tell me about what was going on with people. Mm-hmm. And I had to watch a long time before I made a video because I was always scared I was accidentally going to record a video. So just decided to make a few videos. I believe it was last June, and it was about something my therapist had told me about fuckbucks and emotional energy, and that we only have so many fuckbucks every day, and that you cannot transfer them over to the next day. And woke up, and that video had taken off. I think it's had 2.5 million views, and it was crazy because it wasn't even my advice. And so people were asking me more about my experience, and I was piggybacking off of that. I've always been interested in women's issues. I led a group last year that we did events for empowering women, and it became virtual. So I had that knowledge. But then there was, I think I saw a video of a guy talking about GPS, using it to track his girlfriend. And so it was too long.
They're getting bold and confident here on TikTok.
They are, yes.
Whew.
Yeah. So I responded to the video and said, I had something happen to me where I was cyber stalked, and somebody blue jacked my phone, which essentially their AirPods were paired with my Apple device, with my phone, and I couldn't get rid of them and had to go down this long thing. I ended up having to get a new phone, Apple ID, phone number, it just everything new, lost all of my old stuff. And so then people were really interested in the cybersecurity part. And I thought, oh my goodness, what have I done? Because if I would start a cybersecurity series, blue jacking, which does not happen very often, would be the last thing I would start it with. I would start with safe passwords. So kind of just reversed, and let's start with safe passwords and know that this isn't something that happens all the time. And so really started having people message me and say, you know, my ex has gotten into my Gmail account and they knew the password for the recovery email. And now I can't get into my bank. What do I do? And they've taken over this and taken over that. They're using IoT, which is Internet of Things, like Alexa, Ring doorbells, smart thermostats to perpetuate abuse, turning the thermostat up and down. And what do I do? Nobody believes me. Police aren't believing me. So that's kind of how I got started in this and realized there really was an area. There weren't a lot of women who would talk about tech in terms that everybody could understand it, and that would have somebody to believe them, first of all, that they weren't making this up, because some of it does sound a little out there. But this is absolutely happening. And then kind of bridge the gap, and let's just start from the beginning and talk about what happens, why we need safe passwords. A lot of people say, you know, I don't have anything to hide, so why should I care? So I'll tell you why you should care, because this could potentially happen to you. So that's kind of how I got into what I got into. And it's been very rewarding, and love really kind of the community feel that I've established with a lot of my followers and people that I follow.
You just said something about TikTok that I didn't anticipate either, that I was like, oh, this is like, I actually had a musician, I was watching, it's a musician that I follow. He said, it's like walking into an open mic that any creative person or anybody who's got something going on can just walk up to the mic and we're all here and ready to hear it. Whereas like Instagram's more like you're the person who brought the guitar to the party and nobody wanted you to. And I was like, that's the best way I've ever heard that put ever.
That's fantastic.
That's it. That's how it feels. Oh, that is absolutely how it feels. But I think you brought up something that is essentially like the new frontier of what so many women have been dealing with forever, which is when we tell people about abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, we're often labeled as crazy, or we're labeled as that sounds absurd. And now we're in a new world of that. So the many women that I've worked with who from the time they were little were trained to put keys between their fingers. Now this is a different version of having to put your keys between your fingers.
Right.
And I think, and that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I thought we need to be talking about this. And why isn't anybody telling us how to protect our nudes?
Definitely. And it's so interesting that they always say that all these women are crazy, but then we all have the same experiences. And so I really like when, you know, people get talking in the comments, and a lot of them have experienced the same thing in terms of cyber abuse. And it's like these abusers are handed a manual and they have monthly meetings. This is what I always joke about, because some of it you'll think, wow, that's like, I'll give credit where credit's due. That's a little original. But then you hear it over and over and over of how it's been done so many times. So I'm glad that more people are feeling a sense of community and don't just feel like the lone wolf out there.
Yeah, it's the same intention as it always has been. It just now has a new, I don't know, maybe I'm almost like thinking of like a Swiss Army knife. Like there's just now a new arm in the Swiss Army knife.
I like to say it seems like it comes back to power and control with people, because, and the thing about this type of abuse is it doesn't have physical bruises. So this could be happening to you. And a lot of people have realized that this is a great way to control people. They can forward your emails on and look at it. They can do things with your pictures. They can blare the music at 2 a.m. just to mess with you, just to let you know that they still have some power over your life. So I always say that in two different sides of the arena is cybersecurity and tech companies. And then on the other side, it's law enforcement and the justice system. And no one wants to communicate about how to help one another. So there's this big middle ground, and it is like the wild, wild west. And people don't know what to do.
I don't know if they even knew that they had to be aware of it. I think that's the first problem, is a lot of women don't even realize this is something that they should have an awareness about.
Absolutely.
I agree. And I think the statistics are not reliable at all, just because so many people don't even have probably had this happen and don't even know about it. It's so underreported.
Absolutely. I think, yet again, like all of it's underreported. A sexual assault generally is underreported, regardless of the genitalia you have. But also, all of these kinds of stalking things are underreported because so many of us have been taught from the time we were young to try to justify someone else's behavior in some way.
Exactly.
And if you've never experienced anything like it before, your inclination would be to try to discount it, or maybe try to take responsibility for something that isn't your responsibility. I am curious. I kind of want to hear about some of the first steps. Like you've already mentioned stronger passwords. What does that mean? I really think we should get into that a little bit about what does it mean to have a stronger password?
Yes. So safe passwords, they should be at least 12 to 14 characters long. So that includes letters, numbers, and special characters, upper and lowercase numbers. And it should not be anything identifiable. So, if you went to a high school and a bulldog was your mascot, it should not have bulldog or anything where somebody could potentially guess. It's better if you would have just random letters and with not even words. But I like to say you could even come up with I worked at, it could be, let's say I worked at Starbucks and this happened. You can kind of make your own and think about that. There's also password managers, and password managers are great as long as you don't forget the master password. There's various ones, and you have to kind of do a little bit of research to see what works best for you. But I also like to warn people that if they think their device could be compromised in any way, they need to set those new passwords up on a device that's completely safe, like a friend's, a library, go to a domestic violence shelter and set those up there. That way, if you do have spy monitoring software on your phone or your computer, that they will be safe. But it should be 12 to 14 characters, letters, symbols, and numbers. And also, people hate when I say this, but you need to have different passwords for every account. And you also need to have, that's why password managers are great, and also two-factor authentication. So for example, for Gmail, if I log into Gmail using my password, it will come up on my phone and have me put in a digit or sign in through some other means of verifying who I am to do that. So that's what gets people in trouble a lot of times if they don't have the two-factor authentication. And that's something that's very important for every account. So you can go into your Netflix account, you can go into your Amazon account and set up two-factor. And that's very important.
This is incredibly important, regardless of what your genitals are. As a therapist, having been in healthcare for a long time and moving my entire business online about 4.5 years ago, understanding what it meant to protect not only my information or the likelihood that maybe anyone could get into any one of my devices meant that I had to understand all of the things that you just described, because all of the information, yes, I might be using a HIPAA compliant electronic health record system, but that doesn't mean that maybe a letter that I wrote that I keep in a completely password protected file that is also, you have to authenticate it from another device to be able to get into it. But I had to think through those steps just for my clients. I don't know that the public generally is taught to think like, oh, my information absolutely could be found by someone else and then used by someone else, either for nefarious purposes or even just to look at and have for themselves.
There's a really great resource. It's haveibeenpwned.com. HAVEIBEEN, and pwned is PWNED.com. And you can put in your email address and it will show you any breach. So it's one, people will go in there just to see where they need to go back and change their password. But then two, kind of nefarious people will almost go in there and look and see, okay, I'll put her email address in. I can kind of see what types of things she likes. So does she have a Pinterest account? Does she have, subscription to this blog, to this service? So that's how a lot of people can gather information as well. And then there's also, on the dark web, there are a lot of lists that get published with people's passwords and emails. So it's something that you have to keep doing over and over and over. It's not just a one-time thing. And as nerdy as I sound, saying that it's better to be proactive than having to figure all of this out on the back end.
I think we just saw on the series on Netflix, You.
Mm-hmm.
I think might be, I don't know. It might be, I might be just behind. But You, I think, was the first time I'd ever really seen exactly what you described happen. As someone trying to get close to someone. And of course, like, he is a terrible human being to want to get close to at all. But essentially creating a relationship with someone before they'd ever really interacted by getting into their information.
Exactly. Yes. And it's so prevalent. Even if you don't say, I'm going to put my picture out there, we were kind of talking earlier, reverse image searches. If somebody else has you in a picture with them, it's so easy to go back and identify different people, even if you aren't putting that information out there.
Absolutely. We should definitely need to talk about what we talked about earlier, because like I said, we were all talking 30 minutes before we record. Andrea, like, what you had some thoughts about like dating profiles, like, and how those are at risk too.
Absolutely. In fact, one thing that just popped up from what you were just saying was, Facebook profiles. Now that Facebook has Facebook dating and there's no protection in that, there's no password protection except for your Facebook password. Something I've seen in my business is that people are cloning Facebook profiles, and it's so hard to tell if it's a real profile or not. What are your thoughts about that? Like, do you have suggestions about how we can protect ourselves, especially women?
It's interesting how they do it, because my mom's Instagram actually got sort of cloned, and it was her picture, but it's they used, instead of the T, they used an F. And so it looked very similar, or they will change things just enough. So I think a lot of times with those, it's very targeted. Some maybe an X trying to find information about someone will change one thing so it's just enough. I think, just make sure that you have everything on your account. You can also reverse image search your stuff and see where it pops up. That's what I like to tell people to do. Even as scary as that sounds, there are lots of, I like Tineye, TINEYE.com. Yandex is the Russian reverse image search, YANDEX. I actually like that better than Google's. Google's, you can do a reverse image search, and then Bing, Bing has a great one as well. But it's interesting just to put your own name in, your own information, your usernames, and see what comes up about you. So maybe you have this blog or this other profile you didn't even know about, and it's not really you.
That's a great idea.
I'm like typing furiously over here. I'm like, it's going to go in the show notes, folks. Don't worry, because I'm also going to go do this. I hope all of you listening, please pull over first if you're in the car. But I hope all of you are listening and going to do everything Ashley is describing.
Yes. The one, this is not my office. I am in the middle of redecorating and painting. But one other thing to keep in mind is, what do you have behind you? So is your college diploma in pictures? Because then I can see you went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison in psychology. I can go back and find papers maybe you've written, stuff about you from college. Oh, we see, like, even with computers, it's not that big of a deal, but Windows versus Mac operating system. Do you have pictures of your nieces, nephews, kids, favorite, place, that anything identifiable, a picture outside that might have a street name in the back? Those are all things you need to think about when trying to protect.
I'm looking behind me now.
Yeah.
I actually, it's interesting that you're talking about this because, and many of the listeners are aware that I have done work with those who've actually committed sexual assault. And that was one of the things that we were trained to think about was, what are you wearing? Are you going to have anything that identifies you to them when you leave here and when they leave here? How do you make sure that you don't have your diplomas out, making sure that you don't have pictures of children on your desk, because, and not necessarily because of just protecting those people, but to make sure that you can't be found as easily on the outside. And that's something to think about. Like, how do people find you? How is your information being used? And because the reality is, so many of these companies, they are there to use your information for profit. So they are not incentivized in any way to protect you at all.
Exactly.
And you said something earlier before we started, of course, because we just kept going. We couldn't help ourselves. But about how the idea that I have nothing to hide, in quotation marks. Let's talk about that. Like, because I think that's a huge myth, and it's a mistake to think that your information should be that widely available.
Right. So there are a lot of people say, well, why? I don't care. There's nothing about me, why I don't have anything to hide. So I'm not going to worry about this. So let's just say, and I'll have to get the password. There's a website you can go to see how long it would take a bot to crack your password. And I'll get that to you later. But let's say somebody cracks your password and then gets into your bank account. It's like, would you like me to look at all of your financial information, any place you've ever searched, any weird things you like to search on Google at 2 a.m? I'm sure like mine's interesting, and then have me like stand in the middle of a stadium and just read it off with a microphone. I don't think everybody knows that's really what people can do, and that's what you're signing up for. Mm-hmm. So it's not just, you might not be doing something wrong, but a lot of it comes with, do you really want people to know all of your financial information, where you're going all the time? If your IP address, which is basically your address where you are, I could find where you're sitting pretty much if I can find your IP address. So there's a lot more there than you realize. And then I also like to say, if you are not buying the product, you most likely are the product. Like with Google, they're not just being nice and giving you an email address for free. Like when you're signing those terms and conditions, there's a lot you're signing up for, and you don't know who they're sharing everything with and what they're sharing about you. And so it's just something to kind of keep in the back of your head.
Absolutely.
Whoa.
I remember, so I'm showing my age. And have no problem with this. The early days of the internet, when I was young, and when the family computer, there was one. And for my parents, it was like, oh no, this is going to be in a central location so we can see everything that you're doing. And you, as the child, teenager, are not allowed to be in these chat rooms without any supervision or any of those things. The reality is that now every single one of us is in a chat room somewhere without any supervision. And any of that information can be found by someone else.
Yes.
And I can't even imagine. I thank my lucky stars, and I won't speak for both of you, but I imagine you might feel similarly, that I didn't do my teenage years on the internet with the images and all of those things. I am so glad that I don't have to worry about some of the things that I did as a teenager showing up in a Google image search for now, today, while I'm a professional person.
Me too. We had the same rule with the computers, but my friends and I found ways to get around it. And we would be in these chat rooms, and we would always be 15 female California, it would be age, sex, location. And I don't know why we all lived in California, but that's what I'm finding out through TikTok. A lot of people lived in California. And it's, I just had a TikTok last week about the Wayback Machine. So there's, sorry, my, dog's barking. It's
this is
Wayback
the life now online.
Archived most things from the internet. So if you had an old GeoCities or Angel Fire website, it might have crawled it. So you can put that in there and then see everything. So it was interesting to go back and show everyone what CNN.com looked like from 2004. And then you can still even use the links. So everything is still on there. Just because you think you delete it doesn't mean you've deleted it at all.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, women nowadays are really up and coming in their careers. We're trying to be CEOs, CFOs, public figures. Someone like myself really works hard to be searchable. But at the same time, in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking about security. How safe is this? I run my business under my name instead of a business name. How do women in positions like ours keep themselves safe?
I think it's it's a fine line, and it's different for everybody in every profession. So a lot of my friends, well, first of all, for their younger listeners in like high school or college, err on the side of caution, because you never know what you're going to want to do in the future. And maybe come up with a pseudonym, or just use, Ashley and another initial like P. So I know a lot of my doctor friends won't have their full names on Facebook, but they would be Eleonora G. And so their friends and family could still find them. So they kind of do that. And then they'll really be careful about who they share different things with. It's kind of, I think after COVID and after everything we've kind of been through, there's, the word authenticity, and everyone's really wanting to see people be authentic and live their authentic lives. And you have to really think about, I want to share my life, but I don't want to overshare to where it could come back and harm me, or it could come back and cause me not to get a job that I want. So many HR offices and recruiters will have software, and the software is really interesting, because there's such a wide variety of how good the software is with data scrapers. So I have a friend who was posting about this InfoSec position that he applied for, and they gave him, it was a right-wing, more right-sided politically data scraper. So with data scrapers, there can be influence. So right-wing, left-wing, moderate, varying degrees of technology. But this one would go through all of his tweets, all of his Facebook posts, anything he's ever said, and it would flag things. So if somebody had written something with the F word in it and he just liked it, it would flag it. And he had a stack, it was probably 4 inches high, of paper they put down. And he said, I don't want to work here anyway with somebody that has that type of data scraper. And it was that board, because it was flagging things incorrectly as well. Yeah. But you have to think about that, because you might not be getting even past the initial stage just because of what your social media or whatever you put out there says, because people are looking. There are lots of analyst positions, like I was talking about, where OSINT will just sit around and see what we can find about you all day long and see if you would be an ideal applicant for a company.
I need a nap.
Wow.
I can't. My head hurts a lot.
The United States is in an interesting area right now. So Canada and Europe have better privacy laws than we have in the US right now. And I'm hoping in the next few years, we will have better privacy laws as well. And it's always say knowledge is power. And I'm hoping that as these issues get brought up, that more and more people will realize, what is a reasonable level of privacy. If you're not at your job, what should you be able to expect and say and post when you're not at work? So I'm hoping, I say I'm hoping, but then it could turn around and go the other way. But I'm hoping that we'll address this more as it keeps coming up and more people start sharing their stories.
Absolutely. This pendulum will continue to swing. And what you said about authenticity, I think y'all go to therapy, because then you start to learn boundaries and you start to understand that authenticity does not mean that you owe every single human being on the planet your story.
Right.
And so you are allowed to have boundaries, especially around your safety and security. And as for women, it is absolutely okay to take a look at your life and go, okay, who do I want involved in it and who don't I?
Mm-hmm.
And what you're talking about is essentially doing the electronic version of that. And understanding what electronic boundaries you need, I think, is going to be fundamental to our lives going forward. What does it mean? Who do you let see your life? Who do you let see what of your life? And that being able to find ways to protect yourself is going to be completely important, and from various people, not just people you want to date. Maybe it's the government, maybe it's maybe it's an employer, maybe whatever.
And dating, it's so interesting too, because I was hard enough for me to really learn how to set boundaries with a physical person. So when I set my first boundary, I was so proud of myself. But then I really started thinking about the cybersecurity, and there are so many digital boundaries, even with dating. So is it okay if I like your mom if we're dating, or, friend your mom? Is it okay if I tag you in something that might not be okay because of their job or position? Is it okay if I mention you on my TikTok? There's so many like little nuances that we don't even think about that turn into kind of boundaries with dating and other professional areas as well.
Especially with dating apps nowadays, because you're putting your face out there. You have to have your face on there. And I see so many dating app profiles where people don't have their face because they want that security. But at the same time, you're not going to get any matches if you don't have your face there, because it is a large scale menu that people are swiping through to see, well, do I want to order this? Maybe I want to ask more questions before I order this kind of, reality that's happening. But yet people don't want their face on there, because how easy is it to screenshot that picture and do a reverse search on that person and get tons of information on them?
Just look at West Elm Caleb.
We get a whole new show, whole new episode. West Elm Caleb.
If anyone doesn't know who West Elm Caleb is, he was all over TikTok, and I think made it to Rolling Stone, maybe and a couple other things. But he was on a dating app and essentially dated most of New York City women, and he had on there his name, his age. He was 25, his height. He was 6'4", 6'5", and he worked at West Elm as a furniture designer. Well, I don't know how it all got started on TikTok, but people essentially realized that they were dating the same person, and he would ghost them, and he would create a Spotify playlist and send it to this. It was the same playlist to every person. And he, everybody found out so much about him. So it's a great example about, you really have to think about what you're doing, your actions, because it can come. I won't even get into the ethics of it, but it can come back. And essentially, I don't know if he's employed with West Elm anymore or not, but it can really affect your professional and other parts of your life as well.
Have you guys seen the Tinder swindler? Yeah.
We were talking about Nelly and how he accidentally put out a video of him essentially getting oral sex from a woman that she probably didn't give permission for that to happen.
No.
And what did you just say, Andrea? The
Tinder swindler from Netflix. That's the exact same situation. It's, the guy who swindles tons of money, millions of dollars from different women in different cities. But now I'm thinking like, well, couldn't you kind of do a search on this guy? Could throw his picture into one of those image searches and find out information? Or it's just scary what people can do, the scams that they can pull.
You can't. And some people are so manipulative and so good that they will set up things for people to go to. So they might use the picture they would use on social media or on a dating app to go to some blog and make it look really nice and really, like they are a billionaire on planes. Like on Instagram, you can rent an hour in front or in a private jet just to get your picture taken inside of a jet. And it's like nothing is is this real, what you're seeing or not? So there are so many different ways that con artists like to manipulate people. you can do your due diligence, but then I think it comes back to, which I always tell people to do, but also you have to know the red flags and the boundaries and really, really, it's like a full-time job if anyone knows the sound from TikTok. But you can spend a lot of time to the point where it could even become a problem that you're spending so much time investigating people before you go out with them. But it's, I think you just have to look at your situation, what you're comfortable with, what you're not. I always tell people, your gut is such a good indication of what's going on. And if there's something inside of you that like, this is not right, ask somebody else, ask your therapist, ask a friend, and have someone else, who's not involved in the situation vet it for you or help you vet it.
Beautifully put. So we need better password security. We're going to provide a lot of tools to be able to like reverse lookup if your information is out there already, and any other like real standard things that all of us should be doing out here, specifically women, to maybe protect themselves. Andrea, you too. Like if you got something, share it.
Well, this is my big concern. I mean, this is a great conversation for me to better understand my own security, because I want people to be able to easily search me, to be able to find my services. But at the same time, I've searched, I'm always Googling myself to see like where I fall in the Google search. But at the same time, I never considered the fact that there might be some safety concerns in that as well, because I am using my real name and my business is built under my real first and last name and my phone number. I searched my phone number once and found an old address that I used to live at. And it occurred to me that I should not be using this phone number for this. I shouldn't be sharing this information. Like, where do you draw that line?
Well, one thing that's important, I think, for anybody to do, especially women or people who have worked with a lot of clients in the public, like therapists, doctors, attorneys, these third-party search engines like truthfinder.com, Spokio, things like that, the data brokerage sites, you can go and have your name removed and your information removed. So it's different per site, but I encourage everybody to go on there and look at their stuff. A lot of times you just have to email them. And sometimes they'll fight back, just threaten legally a lot of times is, what I'll do, and they'll remove it because they don't want to deal with the hassle. And then there's another resource I will provide as well, where you can kind of see your digital footprint. But once you do that, you have to remember you have to keep going back every couple of months, because your information will get sold again. And so that's why you've ever filled out your name, your address, it'll keep showing up. They'll know your relatives closest to you, your former addresses. That's how they do it all. When you go to the grocery store and you give them your card for your discount, I never give my real information. There's no, rule saying you have to tell them who you really are. So when you enroll in those programs and you enroll in anything online, use fake information is what I do and like to tell a lot of people to do. And if it's something, especially if I'm really concerned where I have a position, like a government position or a doctor or therapist, really think about, is what I'm getting worth the price of my privacy? Kind of, you have to think of it that way almost.
Such a great point.
I love that question. How is what you're getting worth it? Could be not. And I just remembered like something I did as a teenager that I haven't done for a very long time, which was create an email address that was for specifically all of those accounts. I haven't done that in a long time. I'm going to do that again.
Yeah. I have if you would be concerned if you saw my Excel sheet.
I have just really appreciated this conversation. We could be here another whole hour. I know we could be. But I want to make sure that both of you get a chance to talk about what you're doing in the world. So, Andrea, what do you got going on, and how do people find you in the world?
Oh, you can find me on all of the social media, unfortunately, but that's just how life is nowadays.
I feel like I'm like, now I need to question this question.
Is your
I know, I'm a little afraid. I'm like, well, you can find me under Date Smarter Sexier because that's the kind of my business tagline. So Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I feel really nervous sharing this, but you know what? It's okay. Find me. You know, you can search my name too, unfortunately, but
Now we're questioning everything.
I know,
Everything.
I'm so scared.
But that's the way we need to be. We need to go clean up our footprint.
Seriously. But yeah, you can find me under Andrea LaRosa Coaching, or you can find me under Date Smarter. It's at least I've cornered that market, I guess. But yeah. Look, unnerving. It's unnerving.
Now she's unnerved. She's forgotten about the book that's about to come out.
That's right. How could I forget that? I worked so hard to finish that book. Yes, I do. I have a book coming out called Get the Girl, Dating the High Value Woman. And that'll be published very soon within the next couple of months. And you'll be able to find that as well. Oof, this was an intense conversation.
We're all going to need some meditation after this.
I'm always like, oh goodness, I'm the scary lady from, that talks about the internet stuff. But the reality is, how many people are public facing figures and have to be the president, the governors, our senators, and there's a doctor. I mean, there are so many people that need people to know who they are. And so a lot of it's just kind of look at your own circumstances and you have to decide what's right for you. And just, try to think about things a little bit more before you do them. So it's
Drake is out here putting hot sauce in condoms, making sure that nobody's picking up those out of the garbage. I need to think maybe I didn't think this would cross my mouth ever. Maybe I need to think a little bit more like
Drake. Somebody's looking out for him.
Somebody's looking at him. I need to think. Yeah, I need to look at my identity a little better. Ashley, how do people actually find you in the world? That's even a better question.
You can find me on TikTok or Instagram at Merely Ashley, Merely Ashley. My website, I'm still getting it up and running, is fallsurvivethrive.com, because I think it's completely okay to fall and survive before you thrive. And then I'm going to be working on some classes coming soon for women, and especially in cybersecurity, about various topics. So you'll see more to come on that soon.
Beautiful. I really appreciate both of your willingness. And as much as we joke about this being scary, we all need to hear it. We absolutely need to hear it. And the reality is that now we have someone, now in my brain, I have someone where I can go, I know who you need to see. Because we absolutely need this. And the fact that there is not many, or if anybody out here doing this, bless you. Thank you for being the scary TikTok lady. Appreciate it.
Scary TikTok.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for scaring us all into being smarter.
Yes. And y'all, and what Ashley said was really important too, that if you fall, if something happens and you are fooled, remember, like, every single one of us can be. We absolutely can be, and we're not failures for being fooled.
100%. I've been fooled too.
Same.
Everybody has.
Absolutely been fooled. So I hope that is the final takeaway from this episode. Again, both of you, thank you so much for being here with me. This is fantastic. You both are fantastic. Folks, everything you heard today and lots of resources will be in the show notes. This is going to be a dense show notes. Just get into it and use all the things. Re-listen and go use all the things. And we will see you next time.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Erica. It's always great to be on.